your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we have a wonderful opportunity to talk with a returning guest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, those are some of my favorites, not all, but some of them. They're a lot of fun. They really are, because we get to know the guest a little bit more. And it's been about a year, almost a year, since we've had Dr. Greg Stewart here on the program to join us and talk about a lot of different things, including unlocking the inner strength behind your negative emotions. Oh boy, I tell you, Doc, first of all, thanks for being with us. I can use all the help. We can use all the help we can get. It's great to have you with us again.
And obviously, my pleasure and my honor, sir. Great to be here.
You know, we're all going through stuff, and there's that old, what is it? That old, I guess, Chinese saying, "May you live in interesting times." Based upon my knowledge of history, and it's very cursory nonetheless, humankind has always lived in interesting times. There hasn't been a time when it hasn't been.
Very true.
And although I was talking with someone just the other day, and I was asking them, do you think today, this time period, here we are in the 2020s, the 21st century, do you think this is more challenging a time to live in than any other time in human history? And there was very little pause, and they said, yes, this is more challenging than any other time in human history. What are your thoughts? Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously it's subjective. You ask that same question with anybody throughout human history, and everybody would say yes. But I think objectively speaking, because we've been around for so long, that for different reasons, and one of the major reasons is we're not only carrying the pressures and stresses of our own subjective lives, we're also being impacted by the lives of the entire globe. So it's a matter of that our exposure to, the stresses of 8 billion other people kind of gives us a different vantage than obviously if we're, 200 years ago even, kind of thing.
Yeah, I get you there. And it's very interesting to take a look at what we're dealing with. If I was doing a research project prior to Google and Wikipedia and so forth, I would have a set of encyclopedia, or I would go to the library, or I would seek out individuals, maybe such as yourself, to get the information that I needed on the subject that I was looking for. And I could trust that that information was accurate, at least to the best of the ability of the provider.
Yeah.
But today, you go online. I'll give you very quick background. My wife and I, June, July, and August of 2025, we were nearly scammed out of $5,000 collectively in those 3 months because we went to websites we thought we could trust, and we were looking for a place to live and specifically to rent, and they would ask for a viewing deposit. Nobody charges a viewing deposit,
Right.
even on a home you're going to buy. And so I am gun shy about even using the internet anymore for that kind of process. Now, if you and I communicate and you send me an email with a press kit and other information and on and on and on, I'm more likely to trust it, although you and I both know that people's emails have been hacked over the.
Hmm.
So we are challenged by that. And my response to these hackers and these people who do these kinds of things, you are extremely creative people. Why do you have to interfere with everybody else's ability to be productive and to do what it is that they want to do? And that's kind of where we need that inner strength, but what also creates a lot of the negativity. I mean, it's like I I could do a lot of different things on the dark side of broadcasting. If I suppose there is, um, but I'm having too much fun on this side, you know. But we still get inundated, and we're connected. Those 8.3 billion people, we're all connected too. I mean, it's
Yep.
you basically stated that we are affected by one another, even globally.
Hmm.
Talk to us about that, and what are the steps that we can take to, oh, I don't know if I want to say the word circumnavigate or guard ourselves against, or what the right term is.
Right. Well, you hit it like I was actually thinking of a different ending to when I think about the people who do these things. You actually had a positive twist on it, meaning you guys are so creative. Think about what you could do. So to kind of catch up over the last year, like the first book we talked about is like my first one, I cubed and locked the inner strength.
Hmm.
But in February, I came out with my second book on iCube with couples
Ah,
facing our negative emotions to unlock intimacy in marriage. But what just came out was on leadership, IQ for leaders.
ah,
Where this one, like the first two books, had more of a, hey, we got to walk into our negative emotions and unpack some deeper stuff going on inside of us. Whereas the leadership book, my subtitle is Unleash the Rage of Negative Emotions Against the Obstacles of Becoming More. And because I'm a counselor, coach, and consultant. So, like even these people that when we look at the world today, that part of my leadership philosophy is, I've IQ, EQ, personality, and then spiritual development and destiny. So a major premise is that when we look at the world today, that this rage that creates inside of us, and not only of us wanting to become more than what we are, but secondly is when it comes down to mission, vision, calling, and purpose. So my first book, I talk about everything we do is achieving emotional goals,
mhm,
everything from micro emotional goals to macro. And the macro emotional goals that always, as we're living day to day, our macro emotional goals is basically, trying to obtain our highest quality of life by basically increasing our standard of living, living our values, and fulfilling destiny, calling, and purpose. And that's always in our periphery is that pursuit of those macro emotional goals. Well, everybody on earth is doing it. Now, the emotional goals are good, just like these people who try to scam you, but the paths they took to achieve their own emotional goal, which is to increase their quality of standard of living by getting money, their paths were not rational, healthy, wise, or right. So we have to assess the past. If they could with their gifts, skills, and abilities, that they if they chose a different path instead of taking from others, that the goal is for us when we look at the world. I always ask people, like when I help them develop a mission statement, is what is it about the world that drives you absolutely insane? What is it about the human experience that drives you absolutely insane. There's a million problems in the world, but what is it that just, man, if I could change one thing about the human experience, it would be this. And every single time I've worked with somebody on their mission statement, it has come from their own personal experiences. So out of that seed, I call it the Iron Man core, developing this inexhaustible source of energy that people like that, if they would shift over to that they want to solve a human problem, the human experience. And it might be poverty, which a lot of the people I've seen a lot of documentaries on people who scam are from third world countries. They want to increase their standard of living. The paths they're choosing to do it is wrong, but their emotional goal is good. It's just the path they're taking. So in my leadership book, it's kind of a shift of instead of like kind of exposing ourselves and walking into our own issues and our own heart,
Hmm.
it's taking those negative emotions and turning it into this power that we unleash to fulfill destiny, calling, and purpose in our own lives in order to help other people change the human experience. So it's kind of a shift in this third book, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you know, leadership is a subject we've talked about so many times on this program, and it bears repeating again and again because, and again, this is from my perspective. Okay, a lot of the leaders that we have in this country today, whether it be corporate, governmental, religious, economic, educational, are so full of themselves, they have forgotten why they
Yeah.
are where they are.
Yep.
It's not about I, it's about we the people. Again, regardless of what institution you want to list there. And
Everyone.
yeah, and that I think, for example, I think of the CEOs. They have forgotten who it is that actually created the system that is allowing them to take multi-million dollar bonuses. It's all of the people at the bottom, widest part of that pyramid. It's the workers. It's me and it's you. And it's, as a matter of fact, I've heard this said the corporate heads, religious leaders, economic pundits, government officials, none of them made this country, in particular, specifically this country. It wasn't them, it was everybody else down on the ground floor, the farmers, the tanners, the textile workers, the teachers, and so on and so on and so on. And I am not anywhere near the top of any pyramid, but I am also very cognizant, Greg. I'm beholden to thousands of people for
Mhm.
where I am today.
Very
How
much.
how have they lost sight of that? Is it because of the distractions of the money, the power, the control, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact, we just watched. There's a Netflix documentary out on the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, and there's so many documentaries that like when they're in there with like when the Cowboys went after Jerry Jones bought the team, they went 1-15, and there was so much teachability and so much discipline and so much they went to their values, and that's actually what drove them until they became successful. And once they won two Super Bowls, everything started falling apart. So there's a John Acton said that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And every single one of us is susceptible to the failings of success because we interpret success as an automatic, whether it be increase of our own value and worth or an automatic decrease of other people's value and worth, which means we place ourselves above them. That there's something inherent with us, just not even of skills. We might have incredible skills, a high IQ. That could all be true, but that is completely different than a person's value and worth. And that's what makes them compromise values, mission, calling, purpose is because their emotional goals, what their standard of living, their quality of life becomes preeminent. It's entitlement, right? So there's entitlement in a lot of different ways. So I think that, the whole power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, because I think at the core of that is the assumption that because of my success, I am of greater value.
Hmm.
And instead of saying that my success, with great power comes great responsibility, go Spider-Man,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Which is true though, right? That we have to then turn it into that whatever degree of power I hold, it's supposed to be to help others. A gentleman that I know, his name's John Eldridge, wrote a couple books on men, and he said that for like men versus women kind of thing, that we men, it's strength on behalf of others. Same thing with success. It's success, but on behalf of others. Power on behalf of others.
Yeah.
And if we maintain that, the greatest leaders of all time, it doesn't mean that it's automatic that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's the temptation.
Hmm.
Because there's plenty of leaders who lived like Billy Graham, lived well, finished well. It's not that every single leader who becomes successful fails in this. Many leaders do end well.
Hmm.
Like I've got that, above my door here in my office is how badly do you want to finish well? It is a choice, but we've
Yeah.
got to keep like it's whatever I do, it's on behalf of others. It's not for the pleasure of Greg's life, it's on behalf of others.
We're talking with Greg Stewart, and we are talking about his latest work, I cubed for leaders, and it's information, interpretation, integrity. And we'll talk more.
Intensity.
I
Yeah.
beg your
Yeah, that's
pardon,
right. That's okay.
intensity.
That's okay.
Although integrity is an important part too, but
Integrity. That's what we're talking about, right?
and we will continue talking about it here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. He is Dr. Greg Stewart. What is the doctor in?
I have a PhD in counselor education and supervision, basically counseling.
And has that helped you in formulating this whole I cubed concept of the three and possibly
Yeah.
maybe four books down the road?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it all began like years ago, and I told my in the first podcast where that I got my bachelor's degree in organizational leadership, but then I went into seminary because I became a pastor. But my first semester of seminary, I took philosophy of counseling.
Hmm.
And then I mapped out fell in love with counseling, mapped out a dual master's, got my master of divinity in 3 years, and then an MA in counseling. But then started at that same time started teaching as an adjunct professor in all of the organizational leadership courses I took in my undergrad and fell in love with leadership. At the same time, came across the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. So there's like different branches. I was a pastor, a counselor, and then went to get my PhD in counseling. But I did my dissertation on the relationship of emotional intelligence with job satisfaction and organizational commitment. So after I got my PhD, I started developing my coaching and consulting arm of my work. So that's why I have the three books, one for, individual counseling, one for couples, but then the IQ for leaders, because I've done so much executive coaching. So that's kind of like the development behind it as it relates to this plethora of exposure that I've had and
Yeah.
fell in love with each of the different various disciplines.
You quoted something earlier, and there's a biblical passage that basically says, To whom much is given, much is expected.
Mhm.
And there are times in my life when I'm going, no, don't give me any more. I can't take on anymore. I can't give you any more. I can't be more responsible than I am. But it grows and it changes. It also changes too. But one of the things that I have fortunately learned along the way, and I don't know, there may come a day we'll have to be nudged a little bit too by the universe, and that is not to get too big for my britches. I've had that happen, only rarely, but I've had it happen where the universe brings about an event that gives me what we'll call my comeuppance. And I'm glad for that because uh, I don't do this on my own. I remember a news story from Texas regarding small businesses, and they were interviewing people in Texas who were entrepreneurs, and they were asking them, who was responsible for them and their success. Well, I did it.
Right.
I.
Yeah.
And I'm going, you are a fool and a liar because it isn't just you. It's all of the people who helped you get where you are, including the very customers that purchase your product or service. So I am good at what I do, just like you're good at what you do, but it's only because of the hundreds or thousands of people that have been in and out of your life to help you to become the person that you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
And
I don't have any, I mean, I might combine thoughts together and present it in a new way, but I don't have an original thought, right? So
yeah,
even like speaking of like biblically, it's, Jesus said, apart from me, you can do nothing. So that seals the deal. There's no such thing as a self-made man
right.
that we, get everything good that comes from God above. But secondly, it's he created community in order to create that, a synergistic experience. So yeah, I don't believe in the self-made man. It's so what I say is like, say for instance, that where the personal responsibility comes in is that like our IQ, I was born with it. I can't really do anything about it. I can maximize it through formal and informal education and critical thinking skills, like I talk about in my book. But it really has to do with like IQ. My glass ceiling of impact on Earth is already set by God,
Hmm.
right? So that's not, I won't be held accountable for that. What I believe I'll be held accountable is if I reach that glass ceiling of impact because God has a destiny, calling, and purpose for me to do. But it's always, again, on behalf of others. And the only way I'm going to get to that glass ceiling of impact is if I team up with people in
Hmm.
community to create synergy to get there. So yeah, it's quite the ego driven thing, which like you said, I mean anything like that philosophy will always become an end in itself, meaning it's going to crash and burn at one point.
Hmm.
I open up my book, I dedicate the book. I literally dedicate the book to. I dedicate this book not to the fool, but to the foolish. Because if you're a fool, you don't get it. You just stay in that I'm a self-made man.
Hmm.
But I'm foolish, right? So I list a bunch of proverbs, but then I say in the process of development that the scariest verse in the Bible, speaking, I mean, this is when, really brought low, but for my first two books, I talk about my own journey,
Hmm.
where I'm talking about the mistakes I made. So I use a verse that says the scariest verse in the Bible is be sure your sins will find you out until it happens, then it's the most beautiful verse in the Bible. Because when you come to that epiphany, that understanding and revelation
Hmm.
from the error of your ways, whatever they may be, right? Like even but the worst one is like just being blind to your own pride is like what we're talking about when it comes to integrity, right? Being blind to your own pride. And when you that gets discovered and exposed in you and you recognize it and you stop and you think, what was I thinking? Then you say that exposure is actually the most beautiful experience because it saved you from a very bad ending.
Well, there's also another passage. Well, actually, it isn't a passage, but well, it's a mixture here. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, there will be
Yep.
those who say, well, we're talking about, no, no, no. I'm talking about an individual who knows the truth about themselves. And this is where the other phrase comes in:
Yep.
the good, the bad, and the ugly. All of it. We are where we are today, you and I even, because of all of the parts, the light and the dark that has been in us. If you will, if you want to refer to, all the good things and the mistakes that we've made. But that's, and then of course, I say too that regret, it's a wasted emotion because regret is basically saying, if only I could go back and change this, but you can't. And even if you could, when you get back to the present moment, you wouldn't be who you are.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly true. Like you're right. Because I frame emotion as energy, as a lot of wasted energy. Regret is a lot of wasted energy. So like from my first book, I talk about, when it comes to like healing from trauma, that people who heal say, I'm stronger now than I've ever been. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, but I'm stronger than I've ever been. To couples that stand up in front of a group of people saying, he or she had an affair, but we're stronger now than we've ever been. And it comes to leadership, it's all of our failures. And I spend a lot of time on what I call the process of proactive teachability.
Hmm.
So I don't like the word vulnerability. I don't like the word humility even because there's so much other connotations to it. I like the word teachability.
Mm.
Teachability means that my mental model, I recognized a long time ago, my mental model is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? Hands down, no question. So being teachable means that not only like if you say, hey, Greg, you probably should think about this. I'm like, okay, yeah, I agree with that. But proactive teachability means I go to you, Richard, and say, Richard, where am I blind? What do you see about me that I don't see about myself? I joke in the book and talk about, well, asking people, well, do you feel like you're a good leader? Well, yeah, I think so. Have you ever asked your followers that question? Are you a good listener? I think so. Have you ever asked those who you're listening to if they feel heard by you? Are you a good spouse? Are you a good parent? And we make the assessment of of how good we are in a particular area, but yet we've never asked the people that role by definition entails to see, hey, how can I grow? So it's a proactive teachability, and people like the gateway to all growth. The gateway to all growth is teachability and proactive teachability because you don't know what you don't know. We all like the Johari window model where we have blind areas. And how in the world am I going to be able, how can I eradicate my blind area? The only way to truly eradicate your blind area is to go after people closest to you and say, give it to me. I want to grow. I want to improve. I want to become more emotionally intelligent and becoming more, which is my name of my entire practice. Becoming more. I want to become more than what I am. And so you have to go to people asking them, how can I grow? How can I improve? And then give it to me. What do you see about me that I don't see about myself? And
Mm.
that is the play out of humility and of vulnerability. But the technique, the pathway is the verb of being teachable,
I
the
find it,
attribute.
yeah, I find it interesting that some of these aspects we're talking about are actually positions of vulnerability, and that there are those at the tops of these places that believe that vulnerability is a weakness. And my understanding is that it is actually a strength.
Mhm.
It is only the strong who are willing to be vulnerable at certain times. I mean, there are times when, yeah, you do have to stand, brace yourself and stand, for your convictions and so forth. But at the same time, to me, humility is a vulnerability in an individual. Am I on track
Yeah,
with
and
this?
that's where you're hitting exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to like you have to do all these disclaimers about the baggage surrounding it. Like
Yeah.
vulnerable means that you have a weakness that's exposed that somebody could take advantage of, or that somebody that you could not stand up in a certain situation. You're vulnerable here,
Yeah.
which is by definition is true, right? So that's why I don't think the vulnerability, but vulnerability means that when it comes to what we're talking about, is I am willing to be wrong. I am willing to have my weakness exposed. And it's only through that by which I take my weakness and it becomes a strength.
Hmm.
My strength will be made perfect out of my weaknesses. But it's the acknowledgement, like vulnerability without teachability means you're still vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? Vulnerability without owning it means that you still have those weaknesses, which means you are not as powerful as you could be by
Yeah.
definition. But it's just that it's basically has to do with security, it's being insecure versus secure. Like
Yeah.
I don't care if my weaknesses are exposed. I'm not going to be defensive. I'm willing to be vulnerable, meaning I'm willing to have my weaknesses exposed to the person or people, and through that exposure gain feedback on how I can take it from a weakness to a strength.
Yeah.
That's being vulnerable in our context.
Yeah. And I know too that you and I, are a couple of guys here and we're talking and things are going well. And then there are going to come those moments when we're going to get hit with something. I mean, there have been moments in this process my wife and I have been going through that seems like forever
Yeah,
of
sure.
packing and getting ready to move into our new home and everything. I just want to stop and I just want to cry. I
Hmm.
just am so fed up with the process, if you will, and it's just nuts. You know what I'm saying? And yet at the same time, that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. That maybe
Well,
I need to go take 10, 20 minutes, whatever, and um, just emote and just be there um, to to uh, uh, to release that. I mean, that's the other
Mhm.
aspect of it, is that those are things that need to be released.
Yeah.
We If
Yeah.
we hold on to
You
it,
have this
it'll hurt us.
process of going through the pain you're going through where I say that a trial by definition is a trial because it's exposing a weakness in us.
Hmm.
Like at the end of the day, when you get through this, several things are going to happen. One is the degree of gratitude you and your wife will have once you get into the new home will be much higher because of the pain, right? By
Hmm.
definition.
Yes.
Secondly, is at the end of the day, when you look back, it's like, what's the worst thing that happened to us? And we realize again, in the scheme of things, that what actually the worst thing that happened to us was actually pretty minor. I
Yeah.
mean, it was annoying, but as far as again comparing to the, they kind of surmise that 100 billion people have lived on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And speaking of like the first question of us compared to like the times we live in, these are the best of times and the worst of times,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the classic statement, right? The best of times, worst time, because
Yeah.
the kind of trials that I experience, and that's like the whole premise of everything I do, it's having the right degree of negative emotion based upon the reality of the situation. It's reality testing,
Hmm.
right? So, not to get super philosophical on it, but it's whatever it is, we can't orchestrate what we go through,
No.
but we can orchestrate what our response is to it, and we can orchestrate, right? So like even in helping people, like whether it be leaders or people who are struggling, I always ask the question. I've asked myself this question for 30 years now. Greg, is there anybody who has it worse than you? Right? Has it more difficult? Who has it harder? Is busier? Whatever. Just put your own words in there, and yet was successful,
Hmm.
right? As defined in that context. Well, the answer is rhetorical, yes. And I always like use the example of Viktor Frankl, who was, he was in the right the Holocaust. His
Right.
entire family dies, and he said the only power my captive or don't have over me is the power of my response. And that's where when he made it out, he wrote the book Logotherapy, Narrative Therapy, Writing Your Own Story.
Hmm.
So this is going to be part of your story, and the premise I make because I have a chapter on the leaders refiners fire. That
Mm.
when we as leaders go through difficult times, whether it be individually or with people, it's going to be that the greatest advice I ever received was from the pastor who mentored me, and he said to me, "Greg, one day this will be over." Like I was going through a leadership thing with my boss, and he goes, "One day this will be over." At the end, when you look back, you want to be able to say you wouldn't change a thing in how you responded.
Mm. Hmm.
And oh my goodness, Richard, that piece of advice, when I start going into a difficult time, I would think of it like this season will be over. When I get through the season and look back, I want to be able to say I would not change a thing on how I responded because we have a control column and a no control column. Like I'll probably you could do it if you want, like lay out the list of things that you and your wife have experienced. You have no control over, like the scammers. But what you guys have control over is at the end of the day when we look back, will we be able to say that, I would not change a thing in how I responded? And that is kind of like the it exposes us in the sense of these are areas of growth, but also it's that refiner's fire that takes away the impurities of our integrity, our leadership, whatever it is, and then matures us into solid steel. It's a
Yeah.
powerful experience.
And it really is. And if we allow it to be, it will be. And there's a couple of phrases. One is a Buddhist saying that we things happen for a reason. We may not know what it is, but they're happening for a reason. And if we will step back, all right, we step back and try to look at it from the observer's perspective. At the very least, it might calm us down and saying, okay, well, let's see, from this point backwards, these are the things that happen, and that's why we're here now. And it's looking pretty good. Still a little frustrating, but it's looking good. Things are starting to take shape. And then there's another one that one of my other guests shared with me, and that was that when you're in a situation such as, say, what we are, you utter these words: "This could be the best thing that could have ever happened to us." And quite honestly, what that does on an energetic level is it shifts the energy. You're not in the sadness, the fear, the frustration, all of those aspects.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, you're not even in the happy, the joy, and what have you. You're now more, I would say, probably more in your intellect, in your mind, that is saying, even though it's not necessarily trying to solve the problem, find the solution, it's okay. If this could be the best thing that could have ever happened to us, then let's imagine where we might end up. It could be, and I'll tell you, we're moving from maybe a 1,000 square foot single level cottage, 2 bedroom to a 1 bath, to a 1,400 square foot 2 story 3 bedroom 2 bath house in the mountains.
Nice.
And we're hoping, and our realtor is working like the dickens to make this happen for us because, well, bottom line is we need a place to live because we can't stay where we are. Um, so, when we got that, it's one of those things where, okay, what what could we imagine better than this?
Mhm.
And there are a
Mhm.
lot of things that we could imagine, and what we're walking towards is just that. We're talking with Greg Stewart, Dr. Greg Stewart. I'm Reverend Dr. D, and this is Tell Me Your Story. I Cubed, the series of books that Dr. Greg Stewart has for you to pick up at drgregstewart.com. We'll be linked to that website as well. I actually love the concept, Doc, because and especially, I mean, you have 3 books here. One is for leaders. I'll get this right this time: information, interpretation, and intensity. And then there's the first book, I Cubed: information, interpretation, and intensity, unlocking the inner strengths behind your negative emotions, which is kind of what we're talking about. And then you have your third one, which is for couples, the same 3 categories, and having to do with facing our negative emotions to build intimacy in marriage. And it's interesting. We'll talk a little bit about this now, Doctor, is that the process that she and I are going through right now, my wife and I are going through, she knows that I'm handling most of the dialogue, the signing of documents, and so on and so forth, with her permission, of course. I have never used speakerphone as much so
Mhm.
as to keep her in the loop. And she has asked for that. She says, I want to know everything that's going on. I said, okay, fine. I'm not trying to hide anything, so you've got no problem. And it has actually begun in our senior years. I'm 65, she's 74, to really, I think, bring us even closer together, especially considering where we're moving to and what we will have available to us. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And it wasn't anything that we consciously uh, decided we were going to do. It was more that simple act on my part of saying, yes, I will keep you 100% informed. Whereas in the past, I would just take care of it and then I tell her after
Right.
the fact. And
Right.
it wasn't that she was super upset or anything when I would do that, but it was just that, hey, I'm part of the team here and I really would like to know what's going on.
And
I
that's
mean,
what a beautiful blend, Rich, because I talk about in the book, and it's actually from an old book, 1986, called His Needs, Her Needs,
hmm
where a woman's or wife's primary emotional goal is security, and a husband's primary emotional goal is significance. So while you're about, throughout the years just executing, getting it done, because you're like part of your significance is strength on behalf of others. It's to do it and be a provider, do whatever it is, solve the problem. And you're blending it now because her number one emotional goal is security, safety, which there's the major pathways by which we take to achieve that goal. One of them is honesty and openness.
Hmm.
And so speakerphone and keeping her in the loop increases her security because the openness is that the more knowledge she has about what you're doing and what's going on with them, is that openness provides her that security and safety.
Hmm.
So it's the blending of both of our emotional goals, security and significance, that we complement each other in that. So instead of being critical, she trusts you and inspires you because our major goal is significance. We want to be admired and desired by our spouses.
Hmm.
And that admired is not just a compliment, it's you've got this, you're a man, you're a stud, and I know you got tell us, and while you go through this, can I experience your awesomeness, honey, by you putting everything on speakerphone and letting me watch the process happen, which increases her security, right?
Hmm.
So the two absolutely play together and complement each other.
And it's also helping her health. She's been suffering for the last few years with some health issues, but
Mm,
she's starting to improve. And I think that when we are included, I still remember I was working for a radio station. They let everybody go except me. I was left to run the place back in Phoenix. And then the company that had bought the station I was working for, Solo, bought the station that I had been working for 15 years and brought them into the suite. And little by little, they started taking away some of the tasks that I had been doing. But there was no preamble to it. Hey, and now that we're here over the course of the next few months, blah, 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 blah. It was, hey, I want you to let somebody else, that we have somebody else that's going to do this now. I want to have somebody else that's going to do this. And when I was hosting a program called News Plus was the program. It was a 15-minute segmented 1 hour program, and high energy from my standpoint anyway. Well, at 11:30, 30 minutes before broadcast on a Friday, I was told, "Oh, by the way, this is your last show."
oh wow.
And I'm thinking, I really wish you had told me that after. Okay. It would have been better after, because then I was trying to think. And then, of course, I was told, and you're not to say anything to the listeners about this being your last show. Well, I tried to come up with a creative way of saying at the end, okay, folks, and we'll see you around, you know. But I think that it undermines the level of trust.
Mhm.
I have to say that the same thing would be true, for example, our landlord. A year ago, they got us to sign a lease for 12 months. And there were certain provisions in it that were activated in the summer of 2025. Rather than coming straight out and saying, we're going to do this lease for 12 months, but at the end of those 12 months, we're going to want the property back. Okay, be honest. We want to, because we're going to make repairs, take it off the rental market, and we're going to sell the property. Well, we already knew they were selling. And if they had done that in August of 2024, that would have given us 12 months.
Mm,
Now, the reality is they didn't do that, and we are where we are today. But here's the kicker. I want to end the relationship as cleanly as possible. We've been here for 19, almost 19 and a half years. And the last thing I want to
wow.
do is stir up the waters, and that kind of thing, because that's not productive. It doesn't help us, it doesn't help them, and so forth. But yet we have people in positions of power today. Revenge is part of their
Mm,
uh, rules or their policies or the ways that in which they do things, which is like, isn't it also a biblical passage that says a house
yeah.
divided against itself will not stand?
Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, not to jump ahead, but the next book I'm going to write is how to feel forgiveness.
Ah, yes.
So with our own, like when you talk about regrets, like I can't tell you how many clients have said, I've said it. I haven't forgiven myself yet. Right.
Hmm.
And it's terrible theology, number one, but we know what what we mean. Secondly, it's when somebody needs to grant forgiveness. that in the granting of forgiveness, they said they because they don't feel like they have forgiven, which simply means you're not going to judge, punish, condemn, or seek revenge, right? So you're going to leave the justice to someone else, whether it be the authorities or whatever, karma or God. You're going to leave that justice up to somebody else. So in that process, I am choosing to release the pursuit or authority to judge, punish, condemn, or seek justice. But in that process, it's another thing is that people have a hard time doing it is they merge forgiveness with restoration.
Mm.
Meaning, if I forgive you, that means we're okay. And no, absolutely not. I forgive you, which means I'm not going to judge, punish, or condemn you, but you're not restored because
Right.
there's trust. And
Right.
we have to separate those, right?
Hmm.
And I think when it comes to people in their healing from hurt, we have to separate my healing from that person receiving justice. That people are stuck. You've seen this.
Hmm.
People are stuck in their healing process, the recovery process, because the other person has not received justice.
Yeah.
And that is death.
Yeah.
Like my healing and becoming stronger, you know, determining like the paradoxical of, well, I don't know why it happened, but now I can see why it happened, which as if it's out of our control, but we're the ones that define the why it happened by our response to it. Right? So my healing, my recovery, my creation of meaning from this, the story that I write is not contingent upon that person receiving justice,
Mm.
right?
Well, I came up with, I don't know if I shared this with you the last time we were together, but I came up with this initially three-part process. And one of my guests actually gave me the fourth part. The first part was the hardest because I was being told by my intuition that um, that I had to say this out loud. Thank you, teacher. The last thing I wanted to do is refer to the person who was an annoyance to me as a teacher, but thank you, teacher, for teaching me how not to be. Then the second one was what you're talking about. I forgive you, but more importantly, I forgive myself for
Yeah,
allowing myself to be dragged
yeah,
into this quagmire. Then the third one is a question. What is it that you are so afraid of that makes you behave this way, that makes you talk this way? Now, I'm not asking them to change. I'm trying to understand. That's all. Just trying to
yeah,
understand. And then the
right.
fourth one given to me by one of my guests was saying from an honest heart, okay, but with those first three steps behind me, I love you. You have every right to be here just like I do. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't have to like you or what you're doing. Okay. But I do have to love you in the context of you are a member of the human race. And
Yeah,
then I move on and I let them do their thing and I go do mine.
yeah, yeah. We talk about unconditional love, and unconditional love. The way I define it is that regardless of what you've done in the past, I am open to
Hmm.
us doing relationship and restoration, but there has to be a process of restoration.
Right.
So I don't define you by your failures, by your sins, by your wrongdoings, but there has to be a restoration process. So unconditional love does not mean unconditional relationship.
That's right. That's right. I know too that I've had a couple of situations where I had a friend. I called him a friend, and we worked together. We produced programs together, and and then all of the sudden they decided, I'm done with you. I'm out of here. You were the worst, and da 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 da. And there was even a financial component involved. And what really hurt me most was not the loss of the financial aspect of it. It was the loss of the friendship. We used to go out to lunch, have a burger and a beer, and sit and talk.
Right.
And we even went on the road to the Coliseum down in Los Angeles to cover a rugby game and so forth. And oh, that was so much fun. It was so different from what we would do in the studio. And then to all of the sudden have that relationship just severed from my perspective, for no reason at all because we'd been working together for like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And to be accused of being the worst, and I'm sitting here going, well, if I was the worst, then it's on you because you kept using me as your
Right.
producer, you know? Um, those are the hard ones where
Right.
you lose that connection, that camaraderie. My best friend of 53 years, who has since passed away, he was a friend. We went through grade school, high school, and college together.
Wow.
We had a moment when we were in our early 20s. We traveled across the country together. Now, there is a test of friendship, let me tell you. And we got back to Phoenix and we argued over whether who owed who what. I said, look, let's declare it even because I don't want to lose the friendship.
Mm.
And the same thing with my brother. We're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. So what? He is still my brother. And I still talk to him and I still love him for all of the things he's accomplished, and those kinds of things. Do you find that when you are talking with people and counseling and so forth, that sometimes it's hard to get through those kinds of layers?
Yeah. And I think that again, forecasting had the book after my forgiveness one is going to be I haven't come up with the title yet, but it's going to be on false images.
Hmm.
Now we know about false image of God, but what the person did is like you're the worst producer. They created a false image of you.
Yeah.
So there might be like we have weaknesses, and I'm going to include this in my couples book too. We might have weaknesses that are absolutely true, but then those weaknesses that we see in the other person turn into a false image of them, which means they are defined by their weaknesses, which the bridge between the weaknesses and the false image
Hmm.
are the judgment on their character. We've labeled them. So it's recognizing that regardless if I disagree with you, I think you have a weakness. I think the way you're thinking, I think, is incorrect. That regardless of that, I'm not going to judge your character um, and creating a false image of you, which means I can't view you in any other way. That's what the false image does. It creates a filter, a screen by which every interaction I have with you in the future is based upon those weaknesses,
Hmm.
and I can't see you any other way.
Yeah.
And like even in the stories you told, some of the stories are that, it ruins the relationship because that false image was created of you. In other relationships, you'll never, like your brother, you'll never create a false image of him
No.
because of so many other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, we weren't the closest of we aren't the closest of brothers. Not that that couldn't change, certainly, but it is has nothing to do with politics or religion or economics or anything else. It's just that we just never really connected. We were our own individuals and we went our own separate ways, but we always came together during the holidays or those special events and so forth. And it worked out just fine. And I hope and pray that through the work you're doing through the I Cubed series, that will help people to understand that that's really what's more important than anything else that they might think is important. Community is, from my perspective, which is what this program is all about, community is extremely important. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I mean that's where we talk about the synergy is because I need others and others need me. That it
Yeah.
says that there's a proverb that says a man who isolates himself goes against all sound wisdom.
Yeah.
And it's honestly just that isolation is a form of extreme self-righteousness, is that people have offended me.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, like the church has, the company has, God has, you have. So I isolate myself, which means the self-righteousness involved, meaning that you're automatically better. You just created all these false images and you're automatically better than everybody else.
Right. Right.
Right. But yeah, so to come back to, I always have long answers to easy questions. Yes, community is crucial because I need it because people need to speak into my life and kind of I'm looking for again proactive teachability. I have blind areas and I need that truth spoken into me.
Absolutely. Dr. Greg Stewart's my guest. This is Tell Me Your Story. Dr. Greg Stewart, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program. This has really been a pleasure to have you back again. And I look forward to having you back again when you release your next book and your
Yeah,
next.
yeah. I'll keep reaching out to you, Richard, when I have the next book, and I love talking with you. We have like minds and like philosophies, so
Well, thank
it's
you
a
so
pleasure,
much.
sir.
If I may, real quickly, I want to ask you those three final questions I ask all of my guests here on the program. The first of those is, who is Gary Stewart?
Gary Stewart is my father. My name is Greg Stewart. So Gary
Greg, I
Stewart.
beg your pardon, Greg.
But the funny thing is, Richard, I can't tell you how many times people have called me Gary, which is an honor. I love my dad. God rest his soul.
Hmm.
So Greg Stewart is first and foremost a lover of Jesus Christ. I have no other identity other than him. Secondly, he's equipped me to be a counselor, a coach, and a consultant, and a former pastor and a teacher. And that is how that's my mission, and that's how I help other people improve their human experience.
What gets you up in the morning?
Well, a good night's rest. Well, it's these things. I get up in the morning because before I actually start seeing clients, what gets me up in the morning is I spend time with the Lord, but also is my mind is creative and strategic about the next phase of doing and impacting the world. I mean, just like through people's lives. I'm driven because these are concepts. I love thinking about concepts and how to reframe them and deeper insights into the nuggets of each concept. There's just so much knowledge there. That's what gets me up in the morning.
Absolutely. And finally, what was your best day?
I want to say my best day is officially the day my grandson was born, February 1st. My
Ah,
first grandkid,
very.
right? Of course, that couldn't happen without my kids. I love my kids and my, marriage and all that. But the culmination comes to because I wrote my books, I don't care if I sell one. The reason I wrote these books is to leave a legacy for my children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, and so on. That's why I write these books.
Well, Dr. Greg Stewart, thank you again. And I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, and until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast. Love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life and you in mine. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.